The chair now recognizes Leader Antonio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in strong opposition to the override of the governor's veto. I also think that we are trying our best to make sense, to understand, to describe from our own perspectives what we believe about this issue. And I think one of the things that we all have agreement on is it's incredibly complex. Every single one of us that's spoken has said that. It's very complex. It's very emotional for some people, the people it affects, the people, the decisions that we make today, how this will affect their lives. When we originally, when this bill originally came before the Senate, I really believed that it was based on a lot of misinformation, some fear-mongering was going on, and a blatant disregard for medical best practices. What I've heard today is an interpretation through everyone's belief system. So that may be true, maybe not be true. But one of the things that is true is a majority of the voters spoke when they told us in November that the government shouldn't be involved in their own personal, private healthcare decisions. And at its core, we are not only overriding the governor's veto, we are overriding the will of parents and their children in concert with medical professionals and mental health professionals to make the best decisions for their children. That's what we're doing with overriding the veto. The governor said, and we didn't hear the whole language of the veto, we didn't hear any of the language of the veto, but part of the language of his veto, he said, ultimately, I believe this is about protecting human life. Many parents have told me their child would be dead today if they had not received the treatment they received from an Ohio Children's Hospital. I've also been told by those who are now grown adults that but for this care, they would have taken their own lives when they were teenagers. What so many of these young people and their families have told me is that nothing they faced in life could ever prepare them for this extremely tough journey. Parents are making decisions about the most precious thing in their life, their child, and none of us should underestimate the gravity and the difficulty of those decisions. We often would like to pride ourselves on being able to walk a mile in someone's shoes. It's very difficult to do because the perspective is so different based on everything that you've been through, your own life experience. I'm a member of the LGBT community. I'm a lesbian. I do not know what it's like to live my life as a transgender person. I have no idea what that's like. But just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that I should disconfirm their right to exist. And when someone stands in front of me and tells me this is who I am, how do I have a right to say, no, I'm sorry, you don't really exist? We've been throwing around statistics. We've talked about science, who embraces science, who doesn't. Well, prior to the 20th century, it was commonly held belief that men were intellectually superior to women. The studies were comparing the mass size and the weight of women's brains and men's. And because women's brains were smaller and lighter, therefore, they must also have lacking in mental capacity. Now, you and I all know in this room that isn't true. We know that today. But a whole lot of time passed, and a whole lot of science, and a whole lot of scientific studies took place to get us to a point. If what we all agree on today is that this is a complicated issue that none of us have all the answers for, then I don't understand why we would close the doors. And yes, it's been said, no, just making people wait and all of that. But we don't know what their lives are like, at no matter what age they're at. But their parents do, and the families do. And I'm really concerned about the veto override because now it's in a context of some rulemaking that's going on. We can't ignore that. We can't ignore the fact that between the time House Bill 68 was passed and vetoed and came back and moved here and there, now we're in a whole new world in the state of Ohio. Because now we are talking about people beyond children. Now we're talking about the administrative rule-making process, I find very problematic. It's occurring right now around gender-affirming health cares. The proposed rules go further than House Bill 68. Our caucus has communicated our disagreement with many of the points in that. But this, once again, the bottom line is that politicians have no business banning evidence-based, life-saving medical care, especially when it's endorsed by every major medical and mental health association. Now, it was mentioned a majority of people in the United States feel XYZ. You know, there's a reason why we haven't put on the ballot whether LGBT people could have rights or not and have full citizenship. You know why? Because the majority wouldn't vote for it. That's why. Does that make us any less than? Does that make us less capable? Less able to do our jobs? Perform well in school? Be kind, caring, wonderful parents? I don't think so. But we don't have full citizenship right now. And every time one of these bills goes through a legislature, it may earn all of you votes. You may be able to raise a bunch of money from it, but it does nothing to advance equality, tolerance, respect, appreciation for diversity. What it tells our children is that there are the winners and the losers. There are the people that have the power over you, and some people, if you're lucky enough, you can have the power someday to have power over other people. That wasn't the Christianity I was brought up with. That wasn't what I learned in my faith practice about how to treat people as I would like to be treated myself. So, last week, the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services announced they're undertaking a $20 million study to address mental illness, substance use disorders, and suicide. All issues that have come up as we have talked about providing gender-affirming care. Things the governor talked about. Bless his heart. He understood in addressing gender-affirming care and making it available. These are the kinds of issues we should be dealing with, not adding to the problem by ostracizing youth, denying parental rights, but actually trying to figure out what is the best way forward, because I don't think anyone in this room has the answer right now. Absolutely not. We don't. You know, it was, I've talked to my colleagues. I've talked to some of you. You're probably sick of talking to me sometimes. Asking you not to override the veto. Asking you to figure out, have us go some other way. To honor the people whose lives may be at stake. And to really stop bullying members of the LGBT community, especially transgender people. Because whether you want to believe they exist or not, they exist. They're here. They're here in the room with us. They're outside. They're watching. They're paying attention. They're wanting to know how Ohio's going to be treating them. And by the way, there are not surgeries that happen on children in this state. A lot of the testimony that took place on people who came in and testified about horrific experiences, and they were terrible, were from out of state. They were not happening in the state. I think it's important that we acknowledge that. but something about being done. You know, we want to be done with this. All right, we got to do this override. And then, I can't talk without my hands. We're done, right? We're all done. We'll be done with this. We won't have to talk about this anymore. We can move on. Well, maybe we can move on with our lives, but there are a whole bunch of people that this will affect, and their loved ones, and their friends, and their families, who will have to make decisions based on what we do here and how long things are in the courts, how long things are unknown for people in transgender families. And so it's not going to be done for them. What I'm hoping, what I know, is that while we may, and I hope that this is the last time this legislative session that we're working to take away the rights of people from the LGBTQ community, because we're fatigued and we're tired. But I got to tell you, not tired enough to fight back, to push back, to demand our rights, because that's a part of being from a marginalized group as well, as anybody who testified, as anyone who knows. And yes, some of those young transgender people, I've been listening to one of my neighbors. She's been coming and talking here in the legislature since she was about 6 years old. She has known for a very long time who she is. And she's been telling her parents, she's been telling us. And now she's about 12 or 13, and she's still very clear on who she is. So Ember was testified. She didn't testify this last time. She testified she just wanted to live her life, much like the child that talked to Senator Hicks Hudson. I just want to live my life. I think it stayed with me. Ember's been courageous. Ember has been her authentic self in a world that tells her that it's not appropriate, there's something wrong with that. And you know, I love her name. Her name is Ember, and from the embers, sometimes you think the fire has died. It's almost out. But from those embers, the fire comes back and returns. And I really believe these children that are watching, these families that have participated in this, they are not done with wanting to claim their place, liberty and justice for all. They will continue, and I'm going to stand right there with them, and I know a lot of us will, to demand that full equality, liberty and justice for all, means exactly that for all people, whether you understand them or not, whether you approve of their lives. And I believe, personally, I think God gave us this challenge, put us all together, and we're being tested. How do we deal with people who are different from us? How do we as legislators make sure that we really do uphold liberty and justice for all, that we do everything we can to have the rights of all people considered and respected? I urge a no vote. Thank you.